We should be operating through the lovely new microphone. Just have to show you how cool. Isn't this lovely and beautiful and fancy? So that's should help our sound, and even more, especially this weekend as we start to do our 2-day event this Friday night and Saturday, which I'll talk about that in just a minute. But I just want to say hello to several of you as you jump on. I know people got on for the sound check. Anyway, you'll notice my lovely bride is not here by my side. She is going to be slipping in, probably not in time for tonight's class, but will be with us for the Zoom for the event. So that means I should talk about the events for just a moment. Hey, Heidi, how are you? Good to see you, by the way. We have 2 events. The first one starts actually tonight, so that you may be too late to slip in under the wire on this one. Tonight's event is a 4-week, both a streaming video and Zoom-based event. There's Beth. Good morning, Beth. How's everything over on your side of the planet? Anyway, a 4-week Zoom-based event where people watch both streaming video during the week, and then we gather live on Tuesday nights on Zoom to discuss and kind of make personal application, ask questions, dialogue, maybe kind of do a little bit more kind of teaching. I always think of the Zoom as the mortar between the bricks. And so we've got 4 weeks of that. It's called Outsmart Your Heart, and it's about coming out of lockdowns. Yay, Australia. Good job, Beth. Exciting. Outsmart Your Heart is about developing emotional intelligence, as we always like to say, the #1 indicator of success, both professionally and relationally. Hey, Betty, how are you? And then the one you do still have time to register for, and by the way, I know a bunch of you are registered, so we'll see you at 7 o'clock tonight, so an hour from now. The one you do have time to register, let me jump over here and get this for you, is a little thing called Healing the Heart That Keeps You Hooked. You like how I did that? See, Polly has shown me the magic way of the lower thirds. Anyway, Healing the Heart That Keeps You Hooked was an idea that popped into my head. It's a conversation. It's a lengthy conversation I often have with my clients when they're either trying to start a habit, stop a habit, or overcome compulsivity. And what happens is we so often underestimate the role of the heart in compulsivity. And by that, I mean addictive type behaviors, or thoughts that you can't stop, behaviors that you have a hard time stopping, or behaviors you have a hard time starting. So people who are trying to lose weight, start workouts, the various things that our life is made of, and of course, all the more serious addictions that people deal with, all of those are very connected to the flow of our heart. And so Healing the Heart That Keeps You Hooked is our 1.5-day event that's designed to help people understand and begin some healing in the area of the emotions that keep people locked into compulsive thoughts, behaviors, or emotional states. And so that starts this Friday night. You can register for that. Here I go. Hang on. I'm going to find it. You can register for that right here at events at tdacad.com. And so you can go there and register for that event. And so if you want to join us for that, if you've already signed up for it, we can't wait to see you guys there. It's going to be a little bit different format. It's going to be live, virtual live, as in we will be broadcasting live. And one of us will be manning the comments, and one of us will be manning the camera at any given moment. And so we'll try to answer questions as we go and dialogue as we go. That's Friday night, I think 6 to 9, Saturday 9 to 4, with some breaks and a lunch in there somewhere, so we can eat lunch and not get food on our face right in front of you guys. And then of course the big thing going on right now is we're starting into another cycle of our training and certification. We just graduated 20 people. 22 of them did the training. 20 of them went on to the certification process. And man, the feedback we've gotten from everybody, if some of you guys are on, I can't see the chat and do the lower thirds at the same time, but if some of you guys are on and want to tell the listeners about the certification process, the feedback we got from our students was that it was life-changing for them. And of course, that's our target. We believe that we're best equipped to change others when we ourselves are experiencing deep change. And so that's training and certification. What you see there is the webinar. You'll get about an hour's worth of information. We're joined in that webinar by 2 of our students. who were at the point we recorded that about a week and a half from graduating. And so we brought them on to answer some of the more common questions from the student's perspective. What about the time involved, all that kind of stuff. So if you want to learn more about that, go watch that webinar. You can also find it through the website, but it's time for me to get back to, let me find this, take it off, and get back to the chat so I can see who all is with us. There's Ben. Hello, Ben. How are you, sir? And Susan and Heidi's still there. And then Beth, international border opens next month. Wow, that's exciting. Can you tell I'm excited? Heck yeah. So are you going to fly here, Beth? So then Mike is there. Hey, Mike, how are you doing, sir? Good to see you there and hear from you. And then also border opens to leave. Okay, that's between you guys and Beth. So let's launch into tonight's stuff, because I'm going to try to wrap up at about 6:30 just to be sure that we have time to get everything set up for the event. We are still in a series called Cultivating Culture, the series that really was on my heart, to be sure that people had an opportunity to think through at a time when our culture is in crisis, both economically, relationally, and of course, there's this silly pandemic. I don't mean to just downplay it. I'm just saying all the different things going on in our culture right now, those things have come together to stir up quite a disruption. And it had been my wish that the various leaders, both political and religious leaders of our country, would have taken on the task of guiding us to a degree into a healthy response relationally, culturally, and just emotionally. And so since they wouldn't take my suggestion, not that I even made it to them, but I thought we could jump on and at least do some things that would be helpful to the cultivating a healthy culture. So we did everything from mental and emotional health to handling conflict, dealing with polarization. We did some stuff on relationships. Last week we talked about honor. Tonight I want to talk about this thing called generosity. I know that this can be a buzzword in certain circles that really means giving money to the church. And that's not what we're talking about tonight. When I talk about generosity tonight, I'm really literally talking about a state of mind. Hello, Jim, back with us. Thank you. And Nancy, good to see you. I'm really talking about not even a state of mind. I've been thinking, since I decided that this was tonight's topic, I've been thinking that, generosity really comes down to how we see ourselves, others, and reality. And Susan, kind of in that direction, generosity of spirit. When I think about how we see ourselves, one of the questions is, do we see ourselves as we need something or we have something to give? Do we see ourselves as lacking, or do we see ourselves as overflowing with something that would be of value to somebody? Hey, Margie and Abby, good to see you guys. Welcome. Good to have you here. You came on after all the commercial breaks, so I guess you guys kind of know how the schedule works. Anyway, so as an example, when you interact with somebody at a grocery store or something like that, do you think of yourself as, I wonder what I can get from them? Can I get some? And Susan, you talked about generosity of spirit. I'm even going to talk tonight about what I would call generosity of emotion. In other words, am I giving out to others around me, or am I needy in some way that I'm either overtly or covertly seeking validation or something that they can offer me in that relationship? It really, when I talk about it, it's a way that we consider both ourselves, others, and reality. The first thing is, do we consider ourselves as someone who's here to give or someone who's here to get? Do we have resource from our Creator? Do we have resource from our place in the world that would be of value to people around us? And if so, do we see ourselves as willing and able to give it? Or do we look for ways to gain from others as we give our resource? And so, it's a tricky thing. And Indy, good to see you, by the way. It's a super tricky thing, because really, the nuance is you can give and still be selfish, and you can find subtle ways to give and have a generous spirit or a generous heart. And there's Nina. Good to see you, Nina. Yeah, very much generosity of the heart. So I had an example. Polly and I travel and speak kind of in different seasons. And um, one of the things that happens is when you speak and there's a crowd of people who are listening, they want to talk to you on the breaks. And by the way, when I've got the stamina to do that, and the emotional kind of reserve to do that, I love to do that. I love to stand back at the book table or meet people in the aisles or the hallways. However, like towards the end of those events, I tend to run out of steam and might disappear a bit. But one of the things that I'm aware of is that a lot of times people want something from you. They're not, they're not saying, give me a free book. Can I borrow your shirt? But they're looking for, hey, you're the guy that was on the platform, or you're the guy who, wrote the book or whatever. Can you validate me? Can you give me a word? Can you, like, they come in the aisles looking to get something of, some piece of your soul, some piece of your spirit. We had an experience just last week when we went to this church in San Marcos, and we both kind of, as we drove away, were like, what was different about that? And one of the things we realized is that the people that we encountered there all had something to give to us instead of looking for something to get from us. Even though, we were the ones on the platform and the guest speakers and such, people would walk up to us and they would offer encouragement, or they would offer strengthening, or they would offer a word. And often, people can offer a word like that, and they're looking really for validation. Was that a good word? Or, whatever, am I spiritual enough? Whatever it might be. But genuinely, it seemed that every person who approached us had some encouragement to give, some strengthening to give. And that's part of why this is on my mind, is I thought, what an interesting culture of generosity seems to be just really genuinely present, that, we didn't feel drawn on in the way that we sometimes do when we speak and there's a crowd of people around. Let's see, Nancy says, in the class tonight, but I have a conflict. If I don't participate tonight, I'll see you next week. Yes, the Zooms will be recorded, by the way, for the events. And so those will be available for you guys to watch if you're not able to do that. So part of generosity has to do with how we see ourselves. We see ourselves as needy and looking to gain something out of every relationship. Again, even we can actually give, but we can give in such a way that we're looking for approval, we're looking for validation, we're looking, for people to notice, whatever it might be. When Jesus talked about, if you give, but you're doing so with the expectation that people will notice and make something of it, then you've really already got your reward. And what he's saying is that's not real generosity. That's actually you trying to get something through the act of giving. And so that's why it's such a subtlety, is you can actually give something in a way that's selfish. If you're expecting something out of it, or if you're looking for people to notice or see it, you're really making it about you. So yeah, Matt, definitely. It's always a heart issue, not an outward action issue. So 3 things. Number 1, it's how you consider yourself. Do you see yourself as someone who has something to give, or someone who needs something and you're looking to get it? Second thing is, do you see others as equally valuable to you, and people who you could give to and not feel like you've lost? So the first thing is, how do you see yourself? Rose says, is it possible to learn to be that good kind of giving person? Absolutely. I think it's possible. It's one of the reasons we're having the conversation. But I do think it's important to recognize that it's a hard issue. One of the things that happens when we recognize these motive kind of issues is sometimes it's helpful to limit the behavior to check our own heart. I often tell the story, in my early years, and by that I mean my 20s, however that fits in your world. In my 20s, I remember every time I was in someone else's class and they asked a question, I had an answer. Always had an answer. And what I really was doing was I wanted people to know that I had important and smart things to say. And I didn't know that until I really felt like the Lord tapped me on the shoulder and said, hey, don't ask questions and don't answer questions until further notice. And, literally, I think I argued with the Lord and said, yeah, but you made me smart and I've got important things to say, or, something like a 20-year something would say. like I might say it in my 20s. Yeah, seeking approval, totally. And but what I recognized over the next 12 months is how hard it was for me to sit there and not speak up. The first couple weeks, people would turn and look like, "Don't you have something to say, Bob?" And I would be, I would think, of course I have something to say, but I'm not gonna say it. But over the next 12 months, what I started to realize is when I stopped the behavior, what was going on in my heart became evident to me. And so one of the things that one of the ways that we make that change, Rose, is if we change the behavior, it overturns our heart so that we can see more clearly what the motive behind it is. And then we can sit still in the behavior until our heart motive gets changed. So first of all, do we see ourselves as someone who's needy or has something to receive? Or secondly, do we see ourselves as someone who has something to give? And something to give that we're not looking to get in return, either approval or validation or respect or whatever it might be. Second, then I'm starting to say how we think of others. Do we think of others as equal to us, as less than us, or as more than us? When we see people as more than or less than, we automatically put the human race on kind of this graded scale, and we measure ourselves by whatever standard we've decided is how we assign value, whether it's education, financial status. Wow, that was quite a hiccup. Education, financial status, how many corgis you own, whatever it might be. We create kind of this grading scale in our mind, and we see people as either less than or more than us because we see ourselves and others on that same grading scale. So really, the way that we see others is another part of generosity, because giving to somebody because we feel superior to them is, again, not generosity. It's kind of us patting ourselves on the back or giving out of pity, not out of generosity. So generosity would be, I see everybody else as equal value to me. And as such, when I give to them, I give because I have this to give, but I assume they also have some things to give if they choose to. Um, there really is kind of this thing in the human heart that we tend to see ourselves as superior to others. But the problem with that is it comes from that graded scale, whatever that scale is in our lives. So, when people go on mission excursions, when people, go to visit like a soup kitchen or something like that, the thing that can stir up in our hearts is, we are the good people giving to the poor people, as opposed to here we are as people. I have something they need. I'm eager to share because I have something they need. One of the things that I think is crucial to really a heart of generosity is to recognize that we all have something of value to give. And so just because I may have a standard that I think, I've got this, and this to give, I may think that the other person across from me has nothing to give. And yet, if they begin to give out of their gift and I'm not willing to recognize and receive whatever that gift is, wisdom, encouragement, whatever it might be that they have to offer, if we don't stop and recognize that, again, that's a very self-centered or egocentric perspective, not recognizing that I'm not the only person with something to give. It's generous to allow other people to recognize in other people that they also have in their created design the opportunity to give. Let's see, so hard to stop being generous sometimes. If I do, I feel guilty because I wasn't generous straight away. Um, Beth, that's one of the things we're talking about, is that sometimes, stopping or starting those behaviors helps us recognize the motive. One of the things that sometimes when we think about giving, one of the questions we should be asking is God telling me to do this? Or am I just doing it because I assume that that's the thing to do in this situation? Because I don't think God's intent is that we feel guilty for not doing it and good about ourselves when we do it, but rather that we develop the sensitivity to be moved by both what we have to give and by, by who we are and how we perceive the person across from us. So I mentioned three things. Number one, how we perceive ourselves. Do I see myself as someone who needs something from people around me, or who's trying to get things from people around me? Or do I see myself as someone who has something to offer? And the key to that is something to offer that doesn't have a, um, a payoff that's really my motive. Now, listen, here's where it gets kind of tricky. It's okay to get a payoff. It's okay if someone says, wow, that was really generous of you. That was really intelligent of you. That was really supportive of you. Those words don't discount the giving. They don't discount the generosity. What they do is they give you a chance to check and see, if I didn't get those words back, would I still be doing what I'm doing? If I didn't get the feedback that kind of feels good, would I still be doing it? So it's important to really know this whole thing about heart motive is so crucial. Hey, Nourisha, good to see you. I heard some really great things about you from a mutual friend just the other day, by the way. So way to go. Glad to hear that that's still going well. Um, let's see if I'm missing anything else. Strings attached. Yes. Okay. So first, how we perceive ourselves. Do we see ourselves as someone with something to give and not seeking something in return, whether it be financial, emotional, relational, validation, whatever it might be? Second, how do we see others? Do we see them as more than us or less than us? It's such a toxin to the world, and yet so common, that we all kind of have this grading scale. It's where guilt and shame comes from, is we grade ourselves in some cases more harshly than others. But that grading scale is quite the opposite of this thing called grace, which grace simply says God gives out of his nature, not out of a response to who we are, what we do, what we did or didn't do. And so, yeah, totally, Indy. External validation can easily become an addiction and an idol. Totally can. So the third thing then is, how do we see reality? This is really crucial because, in a time where shelves might be empty, or toilet paper might run out, food might be in short supply. In a time like that, the question is, how do we understand reality and the supply that we get from reality? Does it mean we're not generous, April? Does it mean we're not generous if we hope for validation subconsciously in return? Sort of, yes. And again, it's all kind of relative in the sense that if you only do it for that, and you're really kind of waiting and waiting for that, then for sure, it's important to recognize that subconscious motive. And so if we're hoping for validation subconsciously, again, that's where sometimes changing the behavior can help make a subconscious thing conscious. So what about reality, and what about where does our supply come from? Now, you guys all know where I'm headed with this, and that is, ultimately our supply comes from our Heavenly Father. His intent is to give generously to all of us. He has no limitations in what he has. He has no limitations in the supply that he can make. And so if we view reality, again, on kind of that graded scale, you can see that kind of at the base of real generosity is this thing called grace. As long as we have that graded scale, then we're always going to be thinking, did I earn it? Did they earn it? If reality has limitations, then perhaps I should, hoard it all for myself instead of share with others. And so, so if our Father who supplies us has an unlimited supply of the things that we need, then it's easier for us to let go of things and let them into the hands of others. It's easier for us to share the resource that we have, even if it's not even our resource. I had this thought. I'm not sure how good I am at this, but I had this thought that sometimes generosity even comes down to how we think about others on the road when we drive. Is the road mine, or is the road ours? Is it something that's mine for my needs to be taken care of, or is this road ours and we both have to share equally in the traffic situation? So let's see if I'm missing something here. Heidi, 2 Corinthians 9 says that God loves a cheerful giver. Yeah. And I think part of the deal with that, Heidi, is that God recognizes a cheerful giver has a clear understanding of reality. They give happily because they recognize that when you give, you don't lose. Here's part of the thing. And so far too often this is made a financial thing, and so we get kind of twisted in our responses to that. But what happens is part of the principle is what you hoard diminishes, what you release increases. And so when you release things to others, and when you release things into the flow of reality, if I can say it that way, when you release things, what you've done is you've put them out there for the possibility of multiplication. When you hoard things and hold them to yourself, what you're doing is eventually those things will diminish, and not only will others not have it, but you won't have it either. Mike, thinking about the traffic thing, definitely an indicator of where our hearts are in the moment. Yeah, dang it, right? And so the idea is then if I give generously, if I look at reality as if there are no limits because my Father has no limitations, then I can release what I perceive as mine, and I can give it to other people freely, recognizing that my supply doesn't depend on my ability to gain and preserve, but rather my ability to be in the flow of provision from my Father. If what I do is I hoard, whether it be the left lane in traffic, or whether it be finances, or whether it be a kind word, sometimes there's all those different ways that we might give. The more that I give that, the more that comes available to me, because I've placed myself again kind of in that spiritual flow of supply. Um, oh, feel a little sting, Matt. I actually feel a little sting too when I use that. It's kind of a helpful reminder for me to say the road is ours, not mine. And but I'm better than I was when I was 20. I missed the one about the Lamborghini. Let's see. It's ours unless you have a Lamborghini, then it's theirs. Yeah, right, Mandy. So what we're after is this. Generosity is a way of engaging reality based on your perception of who you are and what you need, and who others are and what they need. The idea is not that you should always give money to people to assuage your guilt. I wanted to use the word assuage. How'd I do? Right? That we should always give money to people to relieve our guilt, but rather we recognize that each one of us has been given a resource. Sometimes that resource is emotional in nature, right? Sometimes that resource is, I can really, if I mentioned the other, when we first started towards the end of an event, my emotional tank starts to run out. And for people to be at a place where they can give emotionally instead of receive is a fantastic thing when someone else's emotional tank is empty. And so, words of encouragement, words of strengthening, whatever it might be that gives to somebody else in a given moment. So the idea about generosity is it has to do with how you see yourself, how you perceive others. Are we on a graded scale? Is there better people or lesser people? And then how you perceive reality and our part in it. I think the benefit, look at Michelle, notice over the years, as I give, I become a conduit for God to give through me, often receive things that aren't even meant for us, right? Yeah, it's funny how like things just happen, and people give things to you and you're like, how did that happen? People give us things and we just watch for who God wants us to release it to. Yeah, that's exactly the picture. Is like, if we come to recognize that we don't own as much as we think we own, then we can release the things that we think we own, trusting that our Father will provide that. Now, listen, I just want to quickly say, since we've talked so much about motive, the issue here is not so give everything away unless God tells you to. The issue is have open hands and be prepared. If God says, give here or hold on to this here, the idea would be that if you see reality in such a way that you see yourself as someone who needs and see reality as limited, you can't have open hands because you've got to preserve what you have. So what we're after then is the kind of mindset that says, you and I and every human you'll ever meet, we're all on equal footing. We all have something to give, and we all have needs that need to be met. Reality has been created in such a way that God wants to give through people. And so for people who give of what they have, whether it be financial, emotional, relational, resource, whatever that might be, for people who live open-handed in that way, the hand that's open in the giving direction is also open in the receiving direction. And generosity becomes a way of living that says, if I have something to give, I'm looking for the opportunity to give it away. I hope what you guys really hear is just kind of the opportunity to check your own heart and know that, who we are, we all have something, of value that, God put us here to be someone who carries his nature in us. And some of us may carry that real strong word of wisdom. Some may carry that real strong word of encouragement. Some may carry just, the ease of physical labor. I'm at a stage in my life where I can do some physical labor, but there's probably just some stuff I should probably not do on a regular basis, or especially on an irregular basis, like I'm unloading a truck full of stuff for an event or something. I've had several different people say, hey, when you've got physical stuff to lift, just give me a call. I'll be there. Well, that's a huge piece of generosity, because it's not just their strength, they're giving of their time and their life in those situations. So we all have something of value to give. And the question is, do you recognize that people around you are put in your path as an opportunity to receive what you have to give? And so then in the process of all that, we can check our hearts and go, what's behind me when I do that? Let me kind of sum up by saying this. I think, when it comes down to it, kind of we come to that place at the end of our life where we take stock. The things that matter most aren't going to be the things that we've accrued, but the person that we've become. And so everything, what we own, what we give away, what we value, what we do, what we don't do, everything becomes an opportunity to really put our heart under the microscope and come to recognize, who am I? But not only who am I, where has my motive robbed me from really fully being the person I'm created and redeemed to be? Generosity is one of those places where if we start to put that under the microscope, we might have once thought of ourselves as generous, but then we might discover, what if there's something else I'm getting out of this that's super important to me? See what happens if you do without that, and we'll find out, more and more about our own hearts together. So some of you guys, will see you in half an hour on Zoom. We're looking forward to that. Others will see you next Tuesday. And I guess some of you, we might see you Friday and Saturday. So we'll look for you guys there. Thanks for joining us tonight to talk about generosity. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.